This is the North End. This is the North End.
Hello and welcome, people. This is the North End YouTube channel. I am Brian, your co-host on the show today. Lots to talk about. January transfer window. I'm going to bring in the lads. First, want to bring in Azaz, Liverpool supporter. Azaz, good to see you, pal. How you doing? I'm going to quickly say hello, and then I'm going to bring everybody in, and then we'll go around the horn to see how everybody's doing. We got Paul with us again. Hey, Paulie, how you doing, pal? Good to see you. And we got a new guest, Mr. Eric Bradstock, Chelsea fan. Very good to have him on the show. And, of course, we need somebody to kind of get through the weeds on this one today because it is going to be a lot to talk about on the Chelsea front. Well, let's go around the horn quickly, and we'll get to Eric last. Paul, good to see you, mate. How's things? You good?
Good, man. I had a nice time just obsessively following the transfer window as per every single transfer window I've ever lived through since the age of 22. So that was fun.
Yeah, it was a mad one. It's something a bit different about this one. Just January is normally a little quiet, and then you get a little bits and pieces towards the end, and somebody does one thing. But
I have a sinking suspicion the financials of the other leagues are part of it, and I also think the World Cup and all that hype with World Cup players.
Yeah,
like if a certain player of a certain age wins a World Cup, all of a sudden he's worth too much money.
Way too much money, which Eric's gonna have a smile on his face about that. I couldn't blame him, really. I mean, it's a lot of money to spend, but it's not his money. Azaz, good to see you, pal. How's things? You're in the UK still? You're hanging out? What's going on?
I am. Yeah, I'm in the UK till next week. Yeah, good, mate. We'll get into it, but my transfer window wasn't as eventful. But yeah, it was crazy following along. Is this happening? Is that happening? Just some random last minute stuff as well. So yeah, very enjoyable to watch as a pure outsider.
As an outsider who didn't really see much happen, which we'll get to. Obviously, we're going to go through each of the clubs. Sure. Six of them. Then we'll talk a little bit about some of the other clubs that have done a lot or have done very little. There's a few in particular that stand out. But first, I want to introduce Eric Bradstock to the channel. Eric, welcome to the channel. Chelsea supporter. Obviously, a ton to talk about today. Tell us a little bit about how you became a Chelsea supporter, living in the Toronto area, and obviously there's likely some family history there. But give us a bit of a rundown.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to it. I kind of feel like I know some of you guys, and we're finally getting to talk face to face, right?
We've been keyboard warring against you for a long time, so it's now we get to chat. So
a little background: born and raised in Ontario, grew up competitive soccer player. I went to the UK in the early 90s on a rugby tour, and we billeted. And every house you go to, what do? You're putting the telly on, and what's on TV? It's footy, right? So my first introduction was watching live football with real fans in the UK. So some were Villa fans, one was a West Ham fan, one was a Macclesfield Town fan, all sorts, right? So that kind of got me hooked. And then if you guys grew up, I'm 42, Soccer Saturday in Ontario, right? It's the only way
Graham Leggett, baby.
And most people I met or my friends were United, Liverpool, and Arsenal fans. And I didn't want to be one. So I got hummed and hawed and didn't have a team to support. And literally the day Rowan bought the club, before we won a thing, I literally said, I'm going to just run with these guys and hope it works out the way it's worked out.
You're just a big fan of oligarchs, is what I'm hearing. Just like
I was looking for someone to turn the league upside down, and sure enough, we did.
Yeah. He's turned it upside down.
This guy reminds me of a James Bond villain. This team is my team. I like this.
Well,
let's see where this goes.
The Bond villain.
You could have picked
for sure. It's a good choice. Sorry, go ahead.
I didn't have a family. I didn't have a family background. Of my parents didn't watch the sport. Okay. My parents came here, or my grandparents, they weren't soccer fans, even though they're British, right? So it was an easy choice, but at the same time, you could have went with a little guy, and I could have been sitting here 0 trophies later, right? So it was kind of a risk.
You could be miserable like me, buddy. You could have picked Spurs, no problem, and you could have been miserable like I am. So
imagine if you picked Aston Villa. Honestly, the number of you dodged some bullets and some relegations.
You did.
100%.
Absolutely.
Spurs were on my radar, believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean, living in London, small club, can't win a trophy. It sort of suits the mold. But
Well, London was
Chelsea were basically like Spurs at that time as well before Roman came in. So there wasn't a heck of a lot of difference. It was probably a bit of eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Which uniform do I like better?
London was a big part because I knew I'd be there a few times in my life and I could always see a match as well, right?
Yeah, it makes sense for sure. Well, welcome to the channel, Eric. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Really looking forward to chatting Chelsea. Of course, this window, we couldn't do the show without you or without a Chelsea fan in particular, but it's nice to have you because we do know, quite a bit about the club and about football, and it's going to be a good chat. So we're looking forward to it. We are going to be saving Chelsea towards the end, though, folks, or sort of middle, actually, before somewhere in the middle. We're going to try to keep Azaz here for that, but Lucas can be joining us halfway or whenever he decides to get here. Mr. Convery, we're not sure if he's going to join us at all. He said he was going to, but he's probably gotten stuck at work. Needless to say, Paul, let's move on. We got a lot to chat about. I'm going to throw it over to you. If you want to kick it off.
So we're going to go through the transfer business. Obviously, the window's closed. Everybody's in or everybody's out. We've got a lot of stuff to react to. We're going to go through the clubs kind of in order of where they are in the standings. That's why you probably won't hear about Chelsea for a while. As we're going to go, that's a cheap shot, but I took it. So some stuff I think is probably pretty significant. I'm going to start with the momentum at the top of the league with Arsenal, who are, is anybody going to stop them is the question. I'm going to say it right now. I thought they had a very good window, a little uninspiring, maybe against the hype of the João Felixes and Modric, the young fellow that went to Chelsea, surprised everybody by doing so. But I think at the end of the day, bringing in a Trossard, who they took advantage of a bad situation that broke out at Brighton. Otherwise, I don't think they would have gotten this player out through the doors. I think he's cover for a few different positions. They bring in a CB whose name I won't even try to pronounce because it's Polish and it'll fuck me up. I think he's one for the future, but at the same point, he's a big body, he passes quite well. That's the profile.
That's the Jakub Kiewor. Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah. Okay.
And then, the shocker for me, because it's a rival helping a rival get over the line with the Jorginho transfer for 15 or 18 for basically a nothing impact.
Thank you.
Feels a little weird.
Yeah, what's up with this? What's up with this, man? First it was City, now it's Arsenal giving Arsenal teams now it's Chelsea. Chelsea giving them players they need, or City giving them players they need. Both rivals. I don't get it at all. It's a strange one.
It's not supposed to be done. It used to never be done this way, and it's it's a London rival.
I truly believe we're so far back that we can't. Arsenal's not even on our radar. So I think they just said, give us 15 million and thank you very much. Good luck. And
I think there's a tradition thing going on with ownership and stuff as well. I don't think if you've got a hardcore Chelsea person from Chelsea and a hardcore Arsenal owner from Islington 20 years ago, they ain't doing this kind of business, particularly if Arsenal are going on a title charge. But, call up Bowley, who's obviously 6 months into the game. He might not necessarily see it. You'd think that there'd be people in the club saying it, but surely for Chelsea it's better for City to win the league. But whatever, it's all good. They can argue about whether London is blue or red. It's not white.
Eric, I got a question for you, if you don't mind me interrupting you quickly here. Jorginho for you at Arsenal. Does he improve that team in the position he typically plays in, or is he competing
100%,
or just add depth? Yeah, okay.
He 100% improves that team. He's a calming influence. He's a technician. He's tactically sound. He can walk right into that team with his experience and probably.
You were slagging him a lot in the WhatsApp chat, all the time.
He's not my cup of tea. He's slow. Okay. He's weak. He can't run. Can't defend. Okay. He can't stop a set piece, but what he can do is offer all. Anyone knows my take on Jorginho is quality player. He's missing a lot though. What he does well, he can pass short passes, backwards, sideways. He can't create. He can't throw a diagonal. He can't do a through ball. He can't stop a set piece. But he can control tempo and he can control a game. So
Arsenal won't be expecting him to do those things, right? I mean, he's going to sit deep and arguably play in a similar role to Partey? Like that's what I'm trying to figure out. And again,
I
I
figure
ask
him
you
and
because
Jack
you know.
are going to work together. Xhaka can
Yeah.
run around and be a little more destructive, and Jorginho can recycle the ball and give it to people that can actually create on that team, right? I think Jorginho's biggest flaw on our team is we don't have a lot of creators. So we're like we get stuck in this rut, right? Where we may win possession and he can hold possession, but where does it go from there? It doesn't go too far, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I know he was kind of the big shocker because he's obviously a very talented player. But I think all the criticisms that Chelsea fans put at his feet still stand when he goes to Arsenal. He does play slow. He slows things down. And Arsenal, their midfield three are dynamic and they're fast. And
that's what
they
I was
move around. Too. Each one of them is very mobile. I think he does improve the team, but at the end of the day, I just think that maybe the more significant signing was Trossard, who is, I mean, he always stood out when he played for Brighton, who are not, we take it for granted, but Brighton fucking not necessarily a football town. They've recruited so well over the past 3 years, but he's a guy that always looked really good, bright, sharp on a team that, didn't create a lot of opportunities for players that played upfield. They were more about ball possession and kind of strangling the game against their opponents. When this guy goes to Arsenal, I think this is maybe the thing that pushes them over the line because Nketiah
it's frustrating.
is the only striker they have.
Yeah, I agree. And he's hit the ground running there too. He's come in and he looks like the Trossard at Brighton, but he's around players that are much better. And especially in that final third, just some of the movement, the things he was doing at his feet. I was just like, I was so frustrated because there's a player that, Spurs offered 9 million for him and Arsenal came in and offered him 20. And he's going to take what the better deal. And the team that's at the top of the league at the moment is just, he's a wonderful player. I really liked him. I was hoping Spurs would actually put in a proper bid, and that's not what happened.
And I'll give him credit for where it is. Like, they had a lot of obvious targets that didn't work out, and they just kept going to the well and finding and unearthing players that I think are. I mean, we're going to talk about why in a second, but I think are enough to get them over the line to win the title.
I think with Trossard as well, he's going to press all of those forwards to be better players.
Yeah, there's competition now.
In a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a rut, but he's had a mediocre 2 or 3 weeks. Well, Trossard's going to force him to be a better player. He can.
They're going to get Jesus back in a month, and they're going to be unstoppable. So
yes, and he can rotate through the line.
Yeah, and I think I'll transfer it over to this. Another part of why I think the title is as secure as you can get at this stage of the season is that Man City did not do anything significant in the window, have been playing flat this season, which is fine. I actually think they're still, it's Man City. They can easily hit some gears. I think that they can still catch up to Arsenal. I don't think anything is entirely decided, but I do think losing one of their best players last season in January this season, because there's been some sort of infighting in the clubhouse, is enough to be, worried. Like I if I was 50-50 before between Arsenal and Man City, I'm like totally going to give the edge to Arsenal now. And it says a lot of how much this player meant last season when they looked so impressive. I just don't see them recapturing the same kind of form from last season without him. And it's this one was a shocker. It's like this to me is the biggest move of the transfer window, and it was an exit.
Am I correct that Arsenal and City play each other 2 times more though? They haven't played each other yet?
They do, yeah.
You are correct.
That is massive.
So they both have the title in their own hands. That's the thing. The points difference is real because obviously it's 5 points, but it's also because it's Man City and like having chased them for the last 4 or 5 years and how unrelenting they can be. Yeah, they're not as good this season for sure. But at the same time, while it's still in their hands, so to speak, I still would be, if I was Arsenal, I wouldn't be that confident yet. Let's get these two City versus Arsenal games out of the way, and then I think we'll see where it stands. If City have taken 6 points off Arsenal, Arsenal are winning the league. That's my opinion. But if they can, but that's easier said than done because Arsenal are playing better than City. So, if Arsenal come out of there with like 2 draws or a win and a draw, then Arsenal are clear favourites. But
yeah, if City don't win both of those games, then Arsenal are going to win.
100%. At that point, it's like the lead, and like where do you pull it back? Do you get what I mean? But right now, it's like I feel like once you've been there, done it, bought the T-shirt, going into that game, like Arsenal will be petrified, and that pressure gets to people. So we'll see. I think we'll know a lot more in about a month.
Does the
they're a young team, but I do think bringing in what's his name who we were just talking about from Chelsea is gonna add to Jorginho. He's gonna add to the intelligence of playing under pressure. I think that they don't typically have in that side. They're a very young team, right? There's not a lot of players in that team that have experience of winning things other than your Shevchenkos and Jesus, who's been injured. So you're bringing in another player who's got a bit of that in him that will arguably, even if it's just in the dressing room, is going to make a difference.
Right, but what do we think this means for City? Let's focus on the transfer business.
Yeah, sure. Fair point.
My question to you guys is, does the Cancelo sale have a ripple effect through the team, kind of like Ten Hag had with United, and kind of say, listen, guys, nobody's bigger than this team. Get in line or you're not going to play. Does that have a ripple?
It's a good question.
Don't think so. So here's an interesting thing I have found. I have found that there has been a lot of people who are very pro this move by Pep. There has been a lot of people applauding Pep for having this iron-fisted will that is his club. If you don't like it, you're out. No player is bigger than club, all this kind of stuff, which is great. That's true. But that doesn't change the fact that losing one of your star players in January when you're in a title race is a huge impact. And I don't think he was the cancer that you had with Cristiano Ronaldo, and that's the first time I've ever referred to him as a cancer, by the way. I think the Eric Ten Hag situation was quite different. I think if you're at Man City right now, you know how good this player is. He didn't do anything that was really that problematic. Like, truthfully, he just wanted to play more minutes, and he didn't understand why he wasn't playing. And Pep didn't like the question and said, you can go if you want to. And he said, I'll go. Like, they both kind of said there was no drama between the two of them. So for me, I have a hard time with the celebration of Pep when he's allowed one of his star players to go, as opposed to helping him turn around and find his form or get past this temporary moment in his career at City. I think that's maybe where we're seeing a flaw with Pep Guardiola, like this whole ease of being able to sell players. Like, that's cool. And yes, you're running it, but also you should be able to work with these players. And I mean, honestly, his resume.
He is so bloody good. He's
so good. And now they're left with Lewis, who's like a 19-year-old fullback who's playing really well, looks really sharp. But like, you need to have guys that can win you games. Cancelo was winning them games last season. Like, he was. Yeah. He's not playing that way this season. And maybe there's concerns that he'll never get to that level again. And this wasn't that big a deal because they understand his level now. But I don't know. The whole thing was just a shock to me. And I think this is what's going to throw them off the title race. As much as I think Arsenal are improved, I think this is a big deal for them.
Do you guys?
The only thing I can compare it to is when Jaap Stam. So Man United had won the league. Jaap Stam was in Team of the Year. Fergie sold him, and that year Arsenal went and won the double. And like, it was clear that losing the best defender in the league, which is what Jaap Stam was at the time, is harder to replace than United got Laurent Blanc in at the time on a free transfer and stuff. And like, Laurent Blanc was a quality player, but he wasn't Jaap Stam in his prime. So that's the
Alex Ferguson's only written down actual acknowledged regret is selling Jaap Stam. Yeah. It's the only thing he's admitted to regretting.
Yeah.
And I don't think this is the same necessarily to that like very storied Jaap Stam situation. Like, let's see what Cancelo goes and does for the rest of his like career or over the next few years. But even this is like Bayern Munich must be like counting their blessings on this one because
I still wouldn't write City off though, to be honest. City is arguably too two legit winning sides on one squad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They got Max.
I don't think anybody here
Max
is ever
Miller's
going to
all
be
over the field,
comfortable.
right?
I don't think anybody
Yeah.
here is comfortable writing City off. I think we know enough
No.
about Pep. We know enough
But
about Man City that nobody's
I
on
totally
the
agree.
show and say it's
You
over.
sell one of the top players at his position in the world, you got worse.
Yeah,
Arsenal
it
got
says
better.
something when you're chasing somebody, right? Like if they were, 5 points clear themselves and Arsenal were chasing them, and there was something like that they had to do, and they still felt like they had enough to maintain the level that they were playing at. It makes sense to some extent. It still doesn't make sense for me, but it's still like you could justify it. Just in this case,
Right.
especially, and as we've spoken about in our chats and whatnot, I do think Man City aren't playing, despite the amount of goals that Haaland is scoring. They're not playing as good a football that we've seen them play in the previous 2 seasons that they won the league. So to lose a player like that in that scenario seems to me like misguided from the manager. But I mean, who am I? It's Pep Guardiola, right? Paul, should we move on to the next? We got Luke in the waitings there too. I can bring him in if you want.
Sure, man. We'll bang this out because some teams are in races, but of different kinds, and didn't do a lot.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the channel,
Yeah.
Luke. Good to see you, pal.
Great to see you, Brian Island. You look fantastic. Loving the trim.
Thank you.
Looking good. And Eric, nice to have you.
Luke, nice to meet you, man. How are you?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, it's just good to get someone that actually knows what they're talking about. This bunch of arseholes. But yeah, no, it's great. Really great. Other than Brian. Brian knows what.
Very,
It was
very
fun. It was nice to have you
Um,
here, Luke.
Yeah, sure. Where's JP? What's going on? Why is he not here bemoaning something?
JP's last night of coaching tonight, and Connie was supposed to join us, but Connie doing Connie.
Oh my
things
God,
didn't make
Luke,
it.
do you not have his high school soccer team schedule? Come on.
No, I know it. Do you know what? I have been streaming it recently, but then, I kind of stopped.
He should start his own YouTube
It's like-
channel for that stuff.
He was streaming it. That's true. And then the court order came in, and now he's not allowed to stream high school soccer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I had about
big
as
deal.
much interest in that as I did
I
in
was-
Bundesliga.
Mm.
All right. Well, we are
This
on
is
to Liverpool now. So, Paul, if you want to leave.
Azaz, man, come on. What is happening? You guys are
What the
not
hell is
having a
going on
great
at Liverpool?
season.
Terrible.
And-
Terrible. So here's the thing. This would have been a weird flex, even if we were having a decent season. Like the fact that we're struggling and this is all that happened. Now, the truth is, if we had signed Gakpo right towards the end of the window, Liverpool fans would have been happy. Everyone would have been happy. I actually think that when Darwin, Diaz, Jota, Firmino all come back, I actually think this guy might play as a number 8. So we might have bought a midfielder who's playing in attack at the moment because he's more of a natural attacker. But just the way he played just the other day against Brighton makes me think that Klopp's got like a number 8 up his sleeve. Anyway, I digress. We can talk about that another time if or when he develops. From a window perspective, especially for a team who has had such good January transfer windows, Coutinho, Sturridge, Van Dijk, Diaz, like we've had really good signings, pivotal signings for Liverpool in January, and then and nothing happened. So clearly there is something connected to the ownership stroke selling the club stroke getting investment. That's definitely a piece of the pie. And then the other piece is, I think Liverpool are sticking to this strategy. I'm not saying I agree with it at all, but they're sticking to the strategy of if they can't get their guy, their number 1, then they're not getting the number 2 or 3. The problem is so many of these midfielders who were clearly playing well, considering we were challenging on all 4 fronts last year, that they've lost their legs, they've lost their confidence. We've had 17 hamstring injuries in the last 2 years. Like there's so much going on at the moment that means everybody within the fan base was clamoring for some kind of activity, not Arthur Melo level, like something, and it didn't have to be Enzo Fernandez level either, but just something in the middle. You see Jorginho going for 12 million. I'm not saying I wanted him, but could he have done a job for Liverpool? 100%. Like all these different names that have come and gone. But yeah, absolutely nothing. And there was a bit of a smile that Klopp had at the end of the last press conference against Brighton. A lot of people are reading into that he was annoyed at FSG. I actually think he's part of this decision making, believe it or not. So this is something we can explore more in a different show, because I know we've got a lot to get through. But like, I don't think Jurgen Klopp is this poor, like, FSG aren't backing me, they're not giving me money. I actually think he's part of this football strategy, and Liverpool fans need to figure that out, because I love Klopp. I don't want any other coach, any other manager managing Liverpool, but like, he's part of this transfer strategy, and I don't see enough from him that makes me think otherwise. He'll drop like a little thing here and there saying, oh, we could be a bit riskier or whatever. But other than that, he's way more passionate to say earlier on in the year, and I think we spoke about it on the channel, earlier on in the year, he was like, I got 9 midfielders. You tell me which midfielder I shouldn't be playing, you know? So like, I think Jurgen Klopp's part of this, which gives me a bit of faith that we might correct it in the summer. Anyway, all that to say, terrible January transfer window. Where our squad is decimated with injuries. Our squad is even more decimated with players off form, legs have fallen off, and yet the only person who comes in is Cody Gakpo, who traditionally, unless Klopp converts him, traditionally plays in a position where we're actually pretty well stacked. If these frigging people would just get back from injury, like, we've got so much talent on the injury table, get them back in. And then does Gakpo even start? I don't think so. Like, he isn't in our like best attacking 3, which is why I think he might have other plans for it.
Was there any targets that you guys were chasing in the summer, to your knowledge or the fans' knowledge, that there's a disappointment we didn't land them, anything like that?
No, you know what's crazy is the fan base ones, Jude. Like,
why, that was never going to happen, fan base. That was never going to happen in January. Come on.
Of course. So really, earlier during the World Cup and earlier on in the window, there was a bit of talk of Enzo. As soon as Chelsea came in for him, we knew we weren't going to be able to compete financially. The Caicedo rumor was swirling a little bit. It started to gain a bit of momentum probably like a week or 10 days ago, and then Klopp squashed that by saying we're not buying anyone. I
always love how the big summer names get started in January. The ones that don't happen in January are the big summer names that come.
Did Poole not forecast your aging midfield? Hendo, Fabs. We saw the decline coming, right? It was never going to be a great midfield this year.
Yeah, I mean,
it just feels like the recruitment was kind of off in that sense, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's all related to.
Or is it the Klopp? I want my one guy, which is Jude, right? Am I just all in on Jude?
But we need more than Jude to fix this. Like, unless somehow Fabinho and Henderson revive themselves, like, this ain't happening. Like, Jude plus who? You know, like, Thiago's been okay, like, not to his standard. We've got a really, really good emerging talent, which I love to see, because we haven't had one since Trent. So we've got a guy playing in defensive midfield. He's Spanish, but he's of Serbian stock. So his dad and Thiago's dad, Mazinho, played in the same Celta Vigo team. So his name is Bajcetic, and he's been playing for us the last couple of games. He's very promising, you know, bit of a metronome stroke. I mean, he's nowhere near this level yet, of course, but like something similar to how Busquets broke into the Barcelona team, as in, you know, like that number 5 sits in, can knit a few pretty patterns. Yeah, him and Bellingham could start next year, but what if one of them...
Eric, to answer your question, yeah, they saw it coming, and no, they didn't fix it.
Yeah,
that's where I was going.
We're laundry listing academy guys now. Yes, they saw it coming. No, they chose not to fix it.
Well, he needs something to talk about. He has no players to talk about.
We're talking about academy guys and their relationship to player. Cool. Nice tangent. Real applicable to the transfer window.
Fair enough.
So has anybody actually paid attention to the other leagues, like the transfers that happen in the other 4 major European leagues?
I did see
I'll tell you, one club outspent all of them, and that's Chelsea. 323 million pounds spent in one transfer window, eclipsing the
Bargain.
total spend of 4 leagues combined.
That's pocket change.
Pocket change.
It's crazy.
Nothing.
It's so nuts.
It's nothing.
It's so nuts.
Pocket change.
It's
I don't
genius
even
on
want
a
to. I
45-year
would
contract.
love to go through the list here, but there's some of the names here are terrible, and I will just flub them a lot. A lot of this is just young talent. I would say a majority of it is future talent. I don't think a lot of these guys, particularly the defenders, are immediately going to be hitting your starting 11. Probably best because some of these guys can't even make your Champions League because the paperwork was all fucked. I'm just going to say it. This is a very busy, very close to gong show transfer window for Chelsea and their new ownership. Yes, lots of players got brought in, and the transfer window is all about bringing in players. But man, there's the success rate to transfers. This is setting up to be a very interesting 3 years down the road. What's the success rate on these transfers? Because I think there's a lot of duds there waiting to happen. Probably some studs.
Well,
Enzo's for sure a stud. I 100% guarantee he's a stud. But
Felix?
there's so much.
Felix could be a stud.
Oof.
Mudryk, he looked the part.
Yeah, I mean, he could be, but again, it's
You named 3 players, but how many players came in, Eric?
Well, Gusto.
I think
he's a real player.
I think Nkunku's going to tear the league up. To be honest with you.
Nkunku is already a proven superstar.
Yeah, he's actually the German. He's the German player of the year. Actually, didn't work out for a couple of players coming into the league, including Werner, of course. But still, he's a very good player.
And I do have a theory on this wild January. I truly believe the Koulibaly, the Alba, the Sterling, those were Tuchel signings. I think Boley he wanted to go young and he got convinced to go old, and he saw the problems right away. And I think he's said, you know what, I'm going young. That was my plan from day one. And obviously money's not an issue. We've seen that, right? They'll sort this FFP out somehow, some way. It's all accounting, and it's pretty simple accounting, to be honest. But I think he's just said, I'm going young superstars. He's rolling the dice. I think Boley sees it.
Hang on a second, though. Can we just backtrack a little bit? Because young and superstars are not what you bought. You bought young with the potential.
That's
potential.
Right. And
potential is expensive, but potential doesn't. Again, the success rate for potential when coming to the Premier League is, one of these guys is going to be a superstar. One of these guys is going to be a Pepe for Arsenal.
But
back and forth you go. I know money's not an issue, but it is eventually going to be an issue. He's not a foreign country. He's decided to spend years and years in investment in 1 or 2 transfer windows, and I'm assuming it has to dry up at some point, probably after this summer. This is a wild thing to just walk in and be like, I'm gonna hit the reset button. I'm gonna take out the cartridge. I'm gonna blow it. I'm gonna put it back in. I'm gonna reset all of Chelsea with 2 windows worth of available players, and assume that a coach can take these guys and make them contenders at the $1 billion value that they're going to be at by the time they're probably done spending.
Enzo wasn't happening if the loophole was being closed. I can guarantee you that.
And again, some of these players, I'm like, I get what you're doing there. I think my problem is
contract. It wouldn't happen.
All of these at one time. All of these at one time, all the players that could possibly fit together as one unit to be the future of Chelsea were all just coincidentally kind of available, and they're at the right age and profile in 2 windows. That just feels like there's Chelsea no appreciation.
Chelsea won't be
where's the due diligence
for 18 months?
Who's scouting these guys? Who's making the decisions?
Eric, I have a question for you in regards to Paul's point here, and I think it comes down to what's the manager going to do? What's Potter going to do with these players? How do you take this amount of players? We've all been making fun of Forest for the amount of transfers they've been doing because it's absurd. They're still absurd. They still did more. But what does a manager do in this situation in the middle of January, in the middle of a season? I guess because your intent matters.
He's getting a 6-month jump start on this process. Truthfully,
I guess you could call it that, but I mean,
he's getting a full 6 months because the season's a write-off. I don't think they really think we're getting top 4. I think they'll be happy if they get to 6th. I think
that's fair. I mean,
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think
he's
that's fair.
saying
It just seemed to
you
me
get a
like
half a year head start. If he gets Enzo
Yeah.
and Mudryk in the summertime, you get what 2-3 weeks of training, and you're off. Now he gets a full
Enzo
6 months.
just a funny statistic. Enzo was $10 million from River Plate 6 months ago.
That's okay.
Do you know what the world record transfer from an Argentina team is?
Is this it? Probably.
I'll tell you. It's Enzo as part
Enzo,
of
yeah.
the percentage they're getting from the Chelsea purchase.
Wow.
So this guy just won
That's
Argentina
crazy.
a World Cup and just got River Plate 25 million pounds or dollars, one of the two. And like he's set for life when he goes to Argentina now. He's going to be loved there forever.
He's a hero. He's going to be
He's a hero.
right there with Diego and Messi.
So Eric, there's been a lot of talk.
He's not going to stop spending. I think you guys think this is it. He's going to buy a striker, a goalie, and probably a center back this summer, and they won't be.
I don't think this is it. I think this
signings.
is not a smart way to build a team. I mean, time will tell. I think this is fucking FIFA. This is video game styles. Like,
Yeah.
I think this is a guy who, as best of my knowledge, what does he know about football other than he's walking in and just spending whatever he wants and the cash book is out? Like, I've seen this in other sports
really
and it doesn't really work this way.
We could go through every player. They're an upgrade on the players they're replacing. And
but
they're
they
only
have to
20 years
gel,
old.
though, right?
And they're only 20 years old. That's the scary part. Sterling hasn't been good enough. Pulisic hasn't been good enough. Ziyech hasn't been good enough. Koulibaly's not good enough. Jorginho's not good enough. None of those players are worthy of wearing our jersey anymore.
Right. But again, I mean, I guess the
Every
point is
one of
it's not
these
about
kids is
improving
better
each
than
starting position. Like, yeah, I see your point. You're improving each starting position. But are you improving each starting position as best possible when you're doing it all in one go? Like, is
Well-
that 23-year-old that much better than the guy that could be available that maybe he's 28 that you can get for half the price if you just waited a little bit longer? Like, what is the
their
rush?
philosophy? Their philosophy is the young, top of the cream of the crop up and comers.
Young-
They don't want to
young
buy
and
a
restless.
28-year-old.
Right.
We're not looking-
I mean, I think
not
you're
looking
giving
for a
them a
Neymar
lot
at
of credit
30.
by using the word philosophy when it's a new guy with a big
Sure.
bag who's just spending on top young talent. I think like there's not a lot of science behind what I'm seeing behind what they're doing. By the way, it could work out. Like, this is so foreign that I'm more reacting to there's probably a reason why clubs don't do this. This feels like you're taking big swings, and big swings have big risks.
It's an
And you're
American
not
approach.
Saudi
It's
Arabia.
obvious.
Sooner or later, you're going to have to start
Yeah,
making
it-
money.
Mudryk trained
so
for 2
American.
days.
Very
And
American.
played 20 minutes, and he was better than everybody on the pitch. And he hadn't played soccer in a month.
Amazing. And
That
then he
shows
goes up
you-
against Brighton and he gets pushed around because he's too slight. And nobody
Well-
knew that he was too slight because they'd only seen him play in fucking the Ukrainian league. And they still spent 75. Like, what I'm saying is,
You can't
You
defend
don't
speed.
know.
There's no defense against speed. It's a proven fact.
I tell you, I was a defender. There definitely is, and I will leave your shins bruised to hell. So there is.
Oh,
yeah.
sure.
Again,
But-
yes, there is a defense against speed, and it's called using your fucking body or kicking through the guy's legs. And it's the Premier
Yeah,
League, and that's the shit that still happens.
Not getting injured and not playing another minute for the rest of the season.
Like, I've
because
seen
of this.
highlight reels of Flair players before in other leagues, and they don't always transfer to the Premier League. Again, it's not saying that it will or not work. I am saying I'm seeing a lot of putting all the chips on the table into the pot and saying I'm all in. And it's really more about this is very risky, it feels like. And I know you're comfortable saying here he's not done spending, he can afford to fail financially,
What's
whatever.
the risk?
But again, can he afford to
Ultimately,
fail?
what is the risk?
That these players don't work out, that
Okay,
you're stuck
so he
with
buys more.
the deteriorating
Well, where's
value
the
of
real
them
risk?
because you. But again, hang on. Are you telling me that you think this new owner is Saudi Arabia and that they have a printing machine of money and that you'll never ever run out of money and that he's here because it's a pet project, that it's not about making money eventually? This money train will
Well,
never
sure.
stop. Is this what you're
No,
saying?
no, I'm not saying that whatsoever. But what I am saying is all these players aren't going to work out. There's no way. He just bought 16 new players. If 5 of them work out, he's probably saying to himself, that's actually not a bad ratio. If he can get 30% of these players to be first team starters, he's probably thinking that's not a bad ratio. The other guys,
Question for you, Eric.
when you look at some of the young guys that
Oh,
he's
go
bought for 10, 15 million, they're not starters this year and maybe not even next year, but he can sell them for a profit. And 2 years,
Yeah.
3 years if he has to.
In fact, like I'm just gonna add one point. Didn't in fairness to Eric, didn't kind of this is what Abramovich did when he came into the league. Like he spent a lot more money than anyone was spending at the time, and he did. He bought them the league, and he bought them titles, and like lots. So like you saying
Nobody's ever
spending-
done this. Nobody's ever done this.
No, but this is just expedited based on the extremities of spending
but like-
in modern
But like
football.
Luke, but nobody's ever done this. This is like, let's be really clear about what's going on right now. Nobody's
Are
ever
you on about in one window?
from this. No, 2 windows now. From the summer spending to this, nobody's ever done this. This is a new and frankly concerning way to spend money because it does fuck the market up in a lot of ways. Like what Chelsea are doing in their little money pit vacuum is affecting the price of players. Like literally rules are being changed now so that clubs can't do this again.
Extended long contracts as well, right? Like American style, 8
That's
years,
false.
10 years. for a
Enzo is
player.
going to be sold for the buyout, no matter if we bought him or someone else bought him.
Right. And if you broke down,
Mudryk was
this is
gonna
where
sell
it's,
for 70
if you
million,
talked
no
about
matter.
individual deals, it sounds all very reasonable. I'm saying the accumulation of all of this, all done at once, this really like, I just be a little patient, use some strategy behind it, slow
I
down.
agree. I agree with that 100%. You can't throw everything in a pot and expect it to be.
And that's
a
what
winner.
it feels like, though, isn't it? I mean, like, goddamn, like there's
Sure.
some gems in that pot. There are some gems in that pot for sure. But like, it is just a big.
I don't think myself or any logical Chelsea fan thinks we're winning a title next year. I don't think one of us do.
No,
If we
God, no.
actually,
Yeah.
this is going to be 2 years. Then we see it. We'll see what happens. We're just
Do you
getting
think-
a
do you
running start on the project. I think that's
Do you
what
think
that's what maybe what his thinking is. I'm going to get a running start rather than wait to the summer and piece together, and I can expedite this process by 6 months.
Well, do you think there's going to be a lot of out in the summer? Like,
Oh,
obviously,
I can
Yeah,
list
he's
you
been
8 or
through a
9
lot.
names. Both
Yeah.
keepers will be gone. Koulibaly will be gone.
Would this
Aldo
be
will be
dependent
gone.
on the status of your fax machine and your ability to send the
Sure.
right paperwork? Yeah.
Yeah, if we can't figure out what the technology, yeah, sure, 100%, right?
Yeah, isn't
I think that'll
Ziyech staying at Chelsea at this point?
Ziyech will be gone. Pulisic will be gone. I
Yeah,
bet
she
you
is staying
Kai
at
will be
Chelsea
gone.
because 3 times they sent the wrong paperwork to PSG.
I wouldn't be surprised if that gets overturned. I don't know.
They,
Like,
they tried
already
it.
been-
They've already got failed for to try
They
to.
squashed
it. Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
like
Yeah,
today.
PSG
Okay.
pissed.
It's whack.
That would be the
Yeah.
ultimate flex, though, if you made a deal just to piss off the team. Is like, oh no, we'll send the right paperwork next time. Oh no, you guys
So
just
Eric,
stay awake.
quick
Stay awake.
question before we can I ask Eric just what don't you like about this? Because that's what I want to know. Because you speaking to you in the WhatsApp chat, you were whinging about everything about at Chelsea and the
Well, there's a
transfer
few things I
status.
don't like.
Spending all this money on a player, João Felix coming in on a loan deal for 6 months, which for good
I hate
reason.
it.
Like you were accurate about that stuff.
I hate it.
Is there anything
to pay a guy $1 million a week?
right now that's happening that you're this makes you nervous in any way, or are you just like flying by the seat of your pants enjoying it?
No. This isn't. It's not my money, so I'll say that right away. So the cost is irrelevant to me.
Right.
I don't think this is going to hamper future spending. To be honest, I can list 150, 200 million of players that we could sell, and we'd be balancing the books for 3 or 4 straight years. That part isn't concerning. The concerning part is we have a young English manager that's probably now expected to actually turn this around quicker than capable. He's not going to survive if this team doesn't start to win. 2 out of 3 games by the end of the season? If he's not doing that, the writing's on the wall, right? So I don't like that
for
part.
sure.
I don't like
Sure.
I don't like that we would loan a player for $1 million a week to shop a player in a window. That to me is bizarre. Absurd to me. What are we going to do? Finish 7th with him? Okay, what's that do for us? We just make Atletico some extra cash, right? But
it's
I mean,
like
there
I
is a
will say-
rumor that we have an option. Now, I haven't seen any facts on that, but I'm hearing now that there's actually a clause in that contract that we can buy him. So if that's the case, then I'm fine with the loan. But if we don't have that option, it was terrible, right?
He did look really good when he came
He
on.
did look good.
He did,
I will say, like, I will give also, I mean, I'm torn because I don't know that this will work. I don't know if it won't work. I will come at it and say, this is really fucking risky. And I think everybody has to like, I at least identify that this is I'm all in poker moment in the movie Rounders. But some of what he's done that has implemented rule changes to payment structures, I love. Like, that's just smart. Like, did they spend $100+ million on Enzo? Not this year. No, they're spreading it around. Like, that's not cheating financial fair play or cooking the books. That's just not spending $100 million in one window. Like, that's just smart. Like, when you break out how much they're actually spending this year on all these new players, it almost starts to sound reasonable. It's really just the gamble of these players need
I'll
to
ask
work
you again,
out.
though, what is the real risk? That
Well,
Chelsea won't be able to
again,
spend?
without interrupting me this time, I'll tell you the real risk is you have 8 years on a contract for a player that if he doesn't work out, you're stuck with that contract. You don't have the return of selling them on anymore, again, if they don't work out, and that is plausible. And then you've got a body that the manager probably feels like whoever the managers are, and it might be multiple managers, it's in their best interest to continue working with them and try to make it work. Like, there's a lot of risks when you buy players for extended contracts. To buy players for extended contracts to make the financial side of it work out and get somebody for 7 years, again, at an age profile where you don't know. Like,
but it's only two players on 170. One was 120, one was 70. The other guys aren't large deals.
No,
right.
no.
So then the risk for that is opportunity cost of
there's a
once
lot
you
of
bought all
deals.
these guys,
Yeah.
it impacts your ability to buy maybe somebody who's better for your system in the summer if somebody becomes available. Or
if
next
I could just
January.
quickly add to this, Paul, and I know it's because it's my club, and probably because I know more about it. But Spurs are going through a lot of what you're talking about right now when it comes to players they can't get rid of. Getting them off the books is really difficult, especially for whether you have a longer contract or if they're out of favor at the club that they're playing at. We've got Ndombele, Lo Celso, Harry Winks are all still Spurs players. They've been on loan for a season and a half, 2 seasons, and they cost a lot of money. Some of them were on more money than others. Obviously, Ndombele was on 150 grand, 200 grand a week, and he's been loaned out. So it's sometimes, and it does depend on the circumstances of the club. If Chelsea go on to eventually get back into that top 4 position because of the players they brought in and they making the money back again, you probably get through it. But if you're in a scenario where you have all these players in your books and you can't get rid of them and nobody wants them and you're suffering to try to manage that, you can end up in a situation where Spurs are in. We've loaned out. We've eight loans. You're only allowed 8. We tried to do 9 and didn't even realize we did it because that's how messed up our books got because of the amount of players that were still on them. So I think there's more risk than just the cost that can happen.
I think but the youngsters were signing on these 7-8-year deals. They're not on $250K a week. I haven't seen the numbers yet. Our wage bill probably got cut in half.
It adds up though, right? If you've got 4 of them on $50K a week, it's still having one player, and then you've got to get rid of those 4. And
Jorginho's leaving $200K, and we're signing a guy for $50K. Our wage bill might be half next year.
Maybe
and half is
I don't know the numbers,
$200 million in a year. It's a lot of money.
I'm thinking more of the long term, Eric, than I am of thinking what I think for me it's a long term scenario that could put you in what I'm saying from Spurs perspective is very difficult to actually move players and bring players in when you can't.
Right.
But there's only 2 of them. It's Enzo and Mudryk. The rest of them weren't bought for big sums.
Yeah, again, it's not the sums; it's the quantity of the amount of players that you can no longer bring in and out because you have too many on the books, whether they're on loan or that's not the cost.
You can sell a Gusto that we paid $25 million for on reputation alone for that value. He had 1 year left in his deal. He was worth a lot more than that.
His reputation holds. I mean, there's a lot of players with good reputations who they end up shitting the bed and becoming crap.
That is kind of how it works, Eric. Guys come in with big reputations, and then once they get to a Premier League team, Pepe is the best example. If you want to know worst case scenario, Pepe at Arsenal.
Tanguy and Ndombele is a very good example as well. Like around the same time.
It's no guarantee that a guy who has a human highlight reel playing on the right side of Lille is going to be capable of doing what he needs to do for Chelsea or even make the team that often, especially with Reece James. Again, I think the biggest thing is not individual purchases. It's not, I have an issue with 1 or 2. It's the sheer quantity of purchases all at one time and the variety of things that were done to get those players. I just feels like, end of the day, if this season is a wash and the expectations aren't even top 4 this season, why do it all in January? For some of them, makes total sense. Enzo, get ahead of everybody else. He's a gem anyways. You beat the system before they change the rules. Enzo's a great signing. But the other ones, the sheer quantity of it, it just feels like there's it feels like there's a clock going down. Like it's like there's a stopwatch, and Boldy's just trying to get it all in before somebody turns the tap off or something. Who knows?
Boldy's probably, yeah, you're right. Boldy's probably nervous that he won't get these guys in the summer. Now he has to compete with teams that maybe don't have the January spend, right?
Maybe.
And I'm sure a few of those signings were probably a long.
Boldy might be a genius. I mean, the other side of this could be a huge flop from a guy who doesn't know what he's doing, or he might be a legitimate genius and he's just beat the system.
Well, how soon before they change that the contract thing and like that
Next year they've already
it's
summertime
next
basically.
year.
Yeah,
but would it be done by the
basically done
summertime
for the next
transfers?
window.
Yeah.
Yes.
So straight away on that level,
The loophole's closed as of yesterday, and he exploited it for about 8 or 10 signings.
Yeah,
I don't have an issue with those signings. The only one I don't get the Enzo one. For me, it seems like an abusively high amount of money for that player. I like he had a moderately decent World Cup. He's not been hugely amazing at his current former team. I don't know, but the rest of them, I think you've signed some very good players and some very good young players, guys you'll make money on. Depending on obviously how they work out, as you said, but. I don't, like it seems like it's a lot of money now, and it will be. I do really feel for Graham Potter though, because this is not how Potter benefits and works, and I think he's been set up to fail. Yeah, like this is not. That
is my biggest problem with it. Yeah, he's been set up to fail. He is being 100%. Set up to fail.
Who do you see replacing him? Just very quickly, like if he goes, like
I truly believe Bully will give him this season, and maybe if we're terrible next year, he won't make Christmas. But if we're competing and we're a top 6 team and maybe you squeeze into the top 4, I could see him surviving one full year with this group. But at that point, who could be available? I mean, it could be a number of. I mean, there's so many options, right? I'm not sure. Is he looking for a Zidane, or is he looking for a young guy to grow with a team for 5 or 10 years, right?
Well, you'd have to look up those names first.
Like I don't think this group's ready for a Zidane and go on and win a treble. This group's nowhere near that, right?
No. I mean, like the reality is I think you are going to be a couple of seasons before you even start kind of getting a sense of who's going to be really part of your team and who's not. Before we get onto the next team, a lot of speculation here because we talked about who they're going to continue to spend money on. You certainly feel very strongly that they're going to spend up to 100 million plus still in the summer. Is Rice still going to be that eventual rejuvenated Chelsea player we expect?
I'll be honest. I'd be 100% shocked if he doesn't put that jersey on next year. I just can't see it not happening. I just can't. Now, the Conte's contract may throw that in. If he can come back this year and play some consecutive games and show what he's worth, and he signs on a 2-year deal at a lesser term, maybe we don't go for Rice. But if we don't keep Conte, there's no way we don't end up with Rice. There's just no way.
And then Lukaku returning to Chelsea, is he just
He's
done?
I bet you they'd take 30 million for him and run.
Okay.
I think their best bet is to get the loan, get a high paid loan again, and just keep running 1-year loans and get it paid back.
Why not? And then you mentioned striker. Is there a striker that you have in mind? Are Chelsea rumored to be attached to any specific strikers right now? I do feel like a striker number 9 is going to be like a hot ticket in the summer.
The rumor and would fit the bill. It was Vahalovic.
Yeah.
He's the one, young, a true number 9.
The worst thing is get for Juventus, the more this guy's name is going to be applied to everybody.
He can link the play. He's got size. He's got strength. He's in a club that's in, I don't know what's the term for Juventus. They're in peril. They're going to have to sell a bunch of guys.
They're in a pickle.
Yeah,
they're in whatever is Italian for a pickle.
But United's in for him. Chelsea's going to be in for him. I mean, there's going to be 4 or 5 clubs probably in for him, right?
Do you think that the current situation with Chelsea, obviously throwing lots of money at young talent, but maybe being a couple of years out from competing or even being in Champions League again, depending how it all works out, do you think that's going to hinder established signings?
Yeah. 100%.
Okay.
I don't think we can go whether that's the route they want to go, I don't think we can attract a 25-year-old starting his prime or in the middle of his prime, a guy that will take you to the top with one or two signings, right? I think Liverpool might be there, a couple of great signings, and they're right back in the mix, right? We have to remember, like, Silva is 40 years old. And he's playing out of his mind. Who's taking that job? We don't have a guy that can take that job.
No, he's too good.
You know, like, so who's like our back line? Sure, we might have some talent that's growing there, but you need a proper back line to really, really compete, don't you? So again,
so this is from Bobby. I don't know if you've heard this, but this rumor that there's a company shelling and covering Chelsea from violating FFP rules, and it's owned by Roman.
Okay.
Is there any hot topics about Roman? Is he completely done?
He's hands off. Yes, there is no shell company that Roman's getting involved with. Right.
We do love shell companies and conspiracies, guys. Thanks for the question, but
huge fan.
No.
The truth is the money in, the money out. The FIFA fair play regulations are what they are. It's money in, money out.
Yeah, let's talk about FIFA fair play for a second, because I think a lot of people have misunderstood what it's supposed to be and what it's not supposed to be. It's not about balancing the equity of the team so that everybody's on some sort of equal footing with each other. It's about avoiding Sunderland going down financially and needing help to stay afloat. It's about Glasgow Rangers overspending on Paul Gascoigne and not realizing that they were kind of cooking themselves by chasing success on the field. Financial fair play is about making sure that there's solvency of a club, and that's why it's only about how much money you can bring in and how much money you lose, so that you're not going under. Not an issue if you're owned by a madcap billionaire or a country state. But again, not there to provide equity and fair balancing between Chelsea spending and Aston Villa spending. It still sucks when teams cheat it. Man City cheated. They're cheaters. They won a title by cheating. They're cheaters. But they cheated a rule that wasn't even supposed to. Like, their level of cheating is so crazy. I don't want to get too much into it, but that's not what's happening here with Chelsea. Like, Chelsea are not cheating anything. They found some really convenient loopholes, and they are gambling
business
that it pays off. And that's what a transfer is anyways. A transfer is, I'm gambling this player is going to pay off or not. Their gamble is maybe bigger than most gambles, and it's all done at once, but it's not a financial fair play faux pas. They're not cheating by any means this time. I know Chelsea have cheated before, so I don't want to say you're not guilty of not cheating. Let's get to our friends over at Tottenham, because I feel like Brian wants to talk about Tottenham transfers.
I always sure go.
I mean, you can tell me who you break it down. The transfer outs, I don't think you're impacted by anything. I thought Doherty being released for free was a bit of
it's a shame.
It was a shame for me. I know he wasn't exactly beloved. I thought he had been playing quite a bit recently. I thought he'd been playing.
That's what I thought.
That was forced, Brian. That was a forced departure.
Yeah. So this goes to sort of the part of, as to what I was saying earlier about that things can get out of hand when you have too many players on loan and too many players in your squad still or in your roster somewhere, that you lose track of what's going on. So I think you're allowed 8 loans in total, and loaning Doherty to Atletico would have been 9. And we ended up having to terminate his contract because they didn't realize it. And then I think UEFA noticed it and said, hey, you guys have too many players on loan. You can't do that. And so in order to complete the Porro transfer into Spurs, we had to terminate his contract. It's the only way out of the situation. So kind of Bobby is a Spurs fan, by the way. What's up, Bobby? Good to see
what
you.
a line.
Yeah.
So right, yeah. Just to that point, like, sorry, go for it.
I just want to say that it just goes to sort of the mismanagement at the top from the chairman and the people, whoever it is that's managing these situations, that they don't know how many players they have on loan. It's and to do all this at the end of a window, like, they could have started this process at the beginning of a window instead of waiting till the last minute to try to get the cheapest price, which is what we always do. And it backfired to some extent, nearly backfired to where we lost our main target and nearly losing Porro. So that was kind of a joke to watch, but it also, for Spurs fans, just to give the head a shake and, here we go again. Thanks for making us look like more of idiots than we should. But anyway, Luke, you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah, I just was there no way that you could have just cancelled the loan and kept him like because he wasn't out of contract until like most
Poro's on loan. Poro's on loan to us with the option to buy, so that's the max loan.
Okay.
So we would lose that deal. We wouldn't have been able to bring Poro in had we kept Doherty.
So let's talk about the ins. Dan Juma comes in from Villarreal.
Yeah.
And
wow.
Pedro Porro on loan from Sporting Lisbon.
Yeah, loan with an option to buy for Poro. The Danjuma one is necessary. We did need to strengthen that part of the pitch with Mora being injured for most of the season, with also Brian Hill going out on loan. We needed another forward to kind of fill in. Sonny's form has been crap. So just needed to manage that situation. So I think he's a good player to bring in. He's basically reminds me of Bergwijn. He's not a heck of a lot of difference than Bergwijn, other than his ability to run at players. He has a good dribble stat that makes him somebody that will be useful in the side, because without Sonny firing, we don't have that. So
he's played against Man United a couple of times, and I can tell you he reminds me quite a bit of a younger Wilfred Zaha.
Me. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I mean, I think he's a bit lower center of gravity, but he does play off the same side of the pitch, and he does do similar things. Certainly, I think that's a good comparison.
He's like a bag of tricks, but like the kind of bag of tricks that when he's on is like he could take over a game for extended periods of time, but when he's off,
yeah,
you might as well.
He's had a good record in the Champions League as well. He scored 6 goals for Roma last year in the Champions League, which is, for any player to do in that tournament is a good stat. And he's done all right. I think he'll fill in the places that we kind of need a little bit of fill, but it isn't the place where we needed it. I mean, obviously Poro that is a Conte signing that is going to be, I think, change the way we play considerably, which is good, but it's not enough. Our defense, 22 goals in 10 games or something like that. When you don't buy a center half to strengthen, you're setting yourself up for the rest of the season, unless he can get him playing like he did at the end of last season, where we were one of the best defenses in the league. But I mean, with him being sick right now, and with him maybe not even wanting the job at the end of the season, it adds to all the who knows what's going to happen at this point kind of situation. So not a good window for me, but nothing happened that I didn't expect to happen.
Does this window help your chances at a top 4 finish?
Possibly, if fitness is good. If Poro stays fit and he plays for the rest of the season, and he brings in all of the potential assists and passing and dynamism up the right hand side, if he stays fit. But then if he doesn't, you've got Royale as your backup. I'd rather have kept Spence and send Royale out. At least Spence can do similarly, at least from a pace perspective, what Poro can do. So no, I don't think it does. I think what would do that would be replacing the keeper and bringing in a center half.
Yeah, your keeper situation's difficult.
Keeper situation's dire. It's really, really dire, and it needed to be done. I said this on my YouTube, the Tottenham on Tour channel, a year and a half ago. We need to start worrying about Lloris. Somebody needs to start thinking about Lloris, because it's going to get bad, and of course it's the inevitability of it. That's where we are. So we're in a scenario where we're in 5th place. We're only 3 points out of 3rd, so we're not terrible points wise, but we had a really good start to the season point wise, and we've been crap since the restart. So can he get him firing again? I don't know. Well, it really comes down to Conte at this point, and Conte, who the fuck knows with him what's going on. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting time for sure. Do you think Conte was happy with the window, or do you think Conte's continued
I think he's happy with. I think he's happy with Poro, because Poro was his man. Poro was the guy he wanted, and he's got that guy to come in. But I do think if he had more, he'd have more players in. If he had his way, he'd have a center half, like a Skriniar would have been perfect with his, a year left of his contract. Went for 20 million to PSG. Why aren't we paying 40 for him? Like, it just, to me, it makes no sense at all. It's frustrating. So yeah.
I'm going to shout out to Chris all the way from London, our Scottish friend who lives in London, who's a big Chelsea fan.
Yeah,
he was tearing up the comments
a couple of weeks ago. Bobby, get in there with Chris and shred him a little bit, even though he's not wrong.
Fight, respectfully.
Like, Brian, what are Conte's wishes this January?
Poro was one of them. He identified 3 positions, and Poro was the first one. He's our main target. The other position was a forward. Now, was it that forward? Probably not. He probably had other forwards in mind, and another center half.
Cowgirl.
And that
Okay.
So
I'm going to move us
So,
on.
no,
boys,
so he
because-
wasn't backed, and he'll probably leave at the end of the season when his contract's out, and we'll be in the same position. And Pochettino will come in, and we'll have a bunch of young players, and everybody will think things are all good again, and then we'll shit the bed and finish 6th or 7th.
All right.
Rinse and
Move us
repeat,
on
baby.
now. I'm going to move us on.
Yeah,
a
move
little
on,
bit.
please. I've said I'm done a while back.
Man United with a relatively quiet window. Uncharacteristically, Man United signed only 2 signings that are loan deals. Relatively new thing for Man United. All other clubs in Europe seem to do it. Bringing in Big Voot, the striker, and I always want to say Salazar, which is totally wrong, obviously. Sabitzer. It's the Austrian. I've struggled with Austrian names for some reason. It's just it's like a bad spot for me. Who is much needed because Eriksson has been reported to be out likely 3 months because Andy Carroll, that bearded fucking lady, decided that tackling through a guy from behind when his team is down 2 goals was a fucking decision that he really wanted to go forward with, and that ref's a piece of
If I
shit for
can
not calling
quickly
him
add to
yellow.
this, Sabitzer Paul is a wonderful replacement for Eriksson. His statistics
I
He's
are
agree.
slightly
incredible.
better.
He's an upgrade.
He's exactly what
I,
Spurs should have bought
agree.
before they sold Eriksson.
I
great business.
very rarely say this, but this is a very savvy bit of business for Man United
Very
in a
savvy.
January transfer window. I would have been happy if
Unbelievable.
they just bought him, but to get him on loan, like
Why didn't
I would love it
Arsenal
if-
investigate this or Liverpool?
when Azaz was on earlier, I was going to ask because this is like, I mean, I would have said an achievable thing for Liverpool to be in with. And maybe they were. Who knows who else was courting this guy?
Yeah.
But it did seem to happen all pretty quickly because it was definitely a reaction to the Eriksson injury, and that got worked out within a day. Eriksson's out, cool, who's available,
Imagine
and we got him.
like that.
Man
Why
United
is
have a
a player
really
of
good
that
relationship with
quality
Bayern Munich.
available for loan?
Brian.
Like,
Yeah,
so
but
true.
it's weird because Bayern Munich and Man United actually have
man.
a really weird like relationship. Like they're very, very cordial for reasons that go back to tragic events. But yeah, I mean, I would have loved it if we had Eriksson and him. I'm very excited to see him come and play for us. I've loved Voot so far. I think Voot's going to be a cult hero. I don't think he's going to score tons of goals, but like I said, when we first signed him, I think his style of play is just so like try hard. And I think that the second game he played, he led the game in like in tackles or something crazy, like just not supposed to do that as a striker. So all in all, for me as Man United fan, serviceable transfer window for Man United. We're really looking to do much more than strengthen the squad for our top 4 finishes and maybe our chances at some cups.
and
But
expect
given,
with a sale on the horizon.
I think there's a lot of kind of wait and see, like what happens. And honestly, I think a lot of the bigger targets that I would want to see outside of Enzo, who's maybe the only target that went this summer, that I want to start trying to build into in the summer. He's the only one that like was taken away. Everybody else seems to be very available. Like I would love to be in for Bellingham in the summer as an example. Gusto, I actually probably should say Gusto would have been a guy I also would have liked to have been in for. But I think where we're at, we didn't need to be spending in January, and I'd rather not get into the mire and the muck of the January signings. And so for once to have 2 guys come in that help the squad that are just loans, I'm pretty content, if not overawed by it all.
And I think you should be pretty comfortable in a top 4. I mean, the way you guys are playing, it's pretty obvious. They're
The way Rashford is playing, you know,
It's looking good. It could all go off the rails really fast. Like Rashford, we're too dependent on. But
Casemiro gets hurt and you're in trouble, I think, right?
Yeah, and I mean that can be said for a lot of clubs and a lot of players, like Arsenal, for example. Like 1 or 2 of those guys go down, I think they're in it. But I mean that's football, right? Like you gotta, they're starter players for a reason. But yeah, we're playing pretty well. I'm pretty happy so far. Let's take ourselves over to Aston Villa, who had kind of a quiet window. Danny Ings is off to West Ham. Clarendon Blue traded in for Clarendon Blue. Weird debut video they did where he just picked a different jersey. And 2 signings, one for the future and one that I think has already started to play for starting 11, who looked really
brilliant.
so I'm looking at going, really one guy you've signed for this year, and he looks really good.
I'm not sure on this, and I really don't notice this. John Duran is a bit of a strange one. Not at any form of a high level, playing over at Chicago. Kind of good. They liked him there, but he was with the Colombian, I think under 21s or 23s, and came out of that training camp to come and sign, and seems really hype. And the early reports coming out of the Villa is that they've been really impressed with him straight away. They thought he settled in really well, which is good. Marino was a fantastic bit of business. He obviously knows him previously, and that was great. There's a bit more to this window though, Paul. Like Danny Ings was the cash, right? So that was 12, potentially rising to 15. Second game he plays, first home game, he gets injured. Poor Danny Ings, poor West Ham, but yeah, really, really tough time. But there was a number of other players. So we also had Frederick Gilbert, who my heart breaks for that guy. Like he's put up like really hard to see like emojis on Instagram, like just like praying hands for like game time. Like he had a really decent season or two at in Ligue 1.
So we're talking about a guy who hasn't even played for Aston Villa for months, right?
Yeah, Frederick Gilbert, like, and for whatever reason, he obviously just isn't good enough. Like that, numerous managers have come in, he didn't seem to get a look in. Cameron Archer, young lad, very hyped about him in the summer. He's been sent out on loan. So Gilbert was released. Sanson loan transfer to Strasbourg. Nakamba to Luton. Bedenak has been sent back to Southampton.
Do any of these actually affect Aston Villa, though? I don't want to be rude, but like
yes.
seriously, do any of these actually affect you guys?
If you shut up for once and listen, yes, they do. So, like, it's like
it's just a long-winded way to do it. He's doing
exactly
his as
exactly. Well, Paul sometimes likes to jump in. Like, there is a point here. Apparently, we're saving almost $1 million a week in transfer, which is a huge thing for us because surprisingly, our wage bill was deceptively high. Danny Ings was given a big old lump, so that was one. But a number of those guys, Sanson was earning fairly decent money, Gilbert was earning pretty decent money, and those loan deals weren't actually as cheap as we thought. So from a financial perspective, it's a very good thing. And I think what I like with what we're seeing right now is we're really seeing Emery being given full control. I think he's a very, very controlled spender. Like, I think he's had to be with like Villarreal and stuff like that. I saw that guy, very funny. But yeah, I think brilliant. I think it's a case of we probably could have done with one or two more, definitely. I'm surprised Archer has gone out if everyone thinks he's as good. I think Duran will feature. Surprisingly, I think we'll probably see a decent amount of him this year. And right now we're playing good football. He's got players that were out of form playing well. He's got Mings and he's got Konza's playing the best football he's played in years since that one really, really strong season. And I always said I think Konza has a potential England centre-back in him. I really do, more so than Mings. I think Mings is very overrated. I've always said that. I think he's a decent defender. He's not an England international. Konza has like a level above where he's playing right now. So I think Villa right now, we could have done with one or two more, but I think the players we've brought in will make a difference. And I think Duran will find the mix. The only other player that we haven't got on this list actually just popped into my head was Traore has been brought back from his loan deal in Turkey. And so it is a very frightening thought. It's either a brilliant day or a truly petrifying day to have Traore and Leon Bailey as our two wing players, because they will both either be horrendous or they will both be phenomenal. There is no in between with those two guys. They're either great or terrible. So we're going to have to see. But there's obviously a financial reason. I think they wanted to not be overpriced in January. I reckon they probably made some inquiries and just didn't like what they heard. So I think they've got to scale back. I personally think there's going to be a big shakeup behind the scenes. I think Lang will be out. Perslow, I think he'll keep his job because he's quite smart in that. Apparently, he is a very minor, but a minor nevertheless owner. So he has a minority ownership of the club, and apparently he's done well on a financial perspective. So I think for Villa, it's a good time. We're winning games. We're up there. I think we're tied first or second for points post World Cup, which is fantastic.
Luke, the best transfer you guys have made was Unai Emery. The difference he's made in the way you guys play. It's
frightening, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
frightening.
he's the difference. He's gotten all those players that you do have that have been sitting there kind of, you're wondering if they're going to do anything, playing good football, being very organized, and making it difficult for teams, and getting points from teams that they normally wouldn't. So that's your best signing. So who cares about the players that have come in? Just as long as you can keep him around, you'll be fine.
No, I think you're absolutely spot on.
agree.
And I think he's put the confidence in people that he needed to. Like, we talk a lot about Ollie Watkins. I'm very hot and cold because he doesn't finish enough. Watkins takes a lot of opportunities. His shoot accuracy is very bad, yada, yada, yada. But he holds up really well. And what Emery's done is he's come out in press conferences and said, no, he's on number 9. And that confidence, I'm hoping that confidence that he pops into Ollie will be enough to get him more goals, to get him, because the work ethic on the guy is second to none. Like, he works harder than probably anyone in the Premier League. Like, he absolutely kills himself. But from a striker perspective, you need him to finish. But I think watch out in summer. I think there'll be a really big striker brought in, like not just Weghorst big. I mean, like actual big money, big scoring and stuff like that. So we'll see. But I'm happy. I'm very happy right now.
I don't know where everybody keeps thinking these big strikers, they score lots of goals, are coming from. There's like 3 on the planet and everybody wants one. Like, where are we finding these guys?
I think
Can they sign for Everton?
They don't grow on trees anymore. It's the hardest position. I swear. You find me a good number 9. That's legit.
There used to be so bloody many of them, and now it's
there's
just
4
like
of them. There's like literally just 4 of them right now. Everton. Oh my God, guys. How fucking bad is this? Sean Dyche has been brought in as the new manager. I forgot to add it here, but Gordon was sold to Newcastle. He must have done something pretty bad to go the way he went. He's going not with their blessing at all. Very cold relationship. Goes off to Newcastle.
Well, right?
Newcastle have got him.
They're young, bright hope, and he's gone.
Yeah,
So
he's an Everton boy, right?
Yeah.
Richarlison for something close to 60. They've sold Gordon for 40. That means they've theoretically made something close to 100 million. It was like 40. And they haven't spent any of it. Like, just straight up.
They did spend a lot previous to that, though. Like
they did, but they weren't bottom of the table at that time.
They spent it very poorly too. So yeah.
And they were rumored. They had made some offers for a few players. It didn't pan off. They were trying to sign some players. They were trying to do X and Y and Z. But at the end of the day,
they're like the worst Spurs when it comes to how they're managing the club. Like, how many managers have they had come through? How many players cycle through different styles of managers? Good managers.
There's no club in Europe that's in worse condition right now than the team that Dyche is taking over. Even appointing Dyche is like we get it. We concede. We just need to stay up.
Yeah,
like
hands in the air. Help!
It's wild.
What are we gonna do?
It's wild.
But I think they probably looked at the situation. I think there's a real mess behind. Remember, don't forget as well. They want the owner out. It comes out that the owner is putting the club up for sale, and then within 6 hours or 12 hours, or even the next day, he comes out and goes, "Oh no, the club's not for sale." Like, that in itself is a humongous problem. But I think
Everton's been on and off for sale for what, 20 years?
I know.
You always hear that rumor. Oh, it's 200 million, 400 million. It's always buying Everton, right?
I mean, their owner is a relatively new owner. I know that the rumors have been around for 20 years, but they do have a relatively new owner. They are investing a considerable amount of money into a new stadium. The joke is they're going to have the nicest stadium in the championship.
Imagine being relegated and having that stadium to pay for.
What happens? What
honestly,
happens there?
This new owner, I think,
happens though.
Came in, and I mean, he was the guy that Carlo Ancelotti was his appointment. He was the guy that was buying Yamaz Rodriguez and was spending all that big bucks and wasn't necessarily buying it with the direction of a sporting director or even a head coach at certain times. And he dug himself this huge financial hole and didn't get any property on the actual field. They're like, if you look at the value of the players they have right now, nobody is worth anything. Everybody's gone down since they were signed there. If any of them worked out, some moved on already. Their form is terrible. Like but
maybe that's the fault.
There's no club in worse state than Everton.
They had Carlo Ancelotti and James Rodriguez playing for them a couple seasons ago.
I know, man. It's absolutely
so they looked amazing for 3 games, and then
it's amazing. But But maybe they've looked at this though, and you know it's hard to take many positives when everything seems to be on fire. But maybe in amongst the chaos, they've looked at it and gone, actually, the players on this team sheet in the 26-man roster aren't actually, they're not a bottom. And I truly believe that. I think there is enough quality at Everton that they shouldn't be where they are, right? And I think if anyone can manage a team of big head, of egos, or whatever, it's this bold bastard, because he's the type. You listen to interviews, and he'll like he's gonna walk into his first training session. One guy's gonna say something. You know what he's gonna do? He's gonna chin him. He's just gonna drop the nut. He's gonna break his nose, and he's gonna just assert dominance. He'll probably air hump him or something. Like that's it. And this is the Dyche way. Like listen to him. Oh, you know, like there's funny interviews coming out. And he's just like, you know, to him talking about like I was looking about that. Like, I was approached by the team, and you know, terrible state of affairs, racist, aggressive. He says, "What a wonderful place to come," because he's rough and ready, isn't he? And I think this
doesn't give a shit.
I
like him.
I think
Everton,
love him.
He might save him.
I honestly
saved them.
I don't know. To do nothing in the window.
The only reason I say that is there's 18 games left. With 10 to go, no way. But with 18,
he's got enough time. He's got enough time.
He might get 20 points. He might get 25 points out of it. He might get 20 points.
Yeah, I agree.
I know.
I agree. And I think there's other teams that are worse than Everton.
So I guess it's maybe worth conversation about no in depth here, but I mean, who are the teams that are in and around the drop that might go down? Wolves are there right now. Wolves, I think, actually had a fucking really good window. Like they needed 6 players. They brought in 6 players. And as far as I know, the manager got everybody he wanted and they were already underperforming. I think they're out of the drop.
Yep.
Bournemouth brought in some good players as well. They were active. They're doing something to save their season. Southampton brought in an entire new set of attackers.
Apparently they arguably had one of the best windows. I haven't had a good solid look at it, but apparently Southampton have done very well in the window. So, you know, they could move themselves up for sure.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, my point is, other teams have done something. They've moved forward. Everton are the only team that signed zero, nothing, nada. The entire
it's a good show. I mean, he's going to have to do a lot to get them to stay up. And certainly those other teams, maybe they've done stuff. Does that stuff work? Is the other question, because they've been just so piss poor and poorly managed. So, yeah, it's going to be tough. But like Eric said, there's a lot of football to be played. 18 games. You know, if you can get them playing disciplined defense and start from there, he can make it really difficult to beat, and then eventually can get enough points to get him out of that bottom 3.
I think that's where Dyche might differ from these other managers down in that bottom, 6, we'll call it. He's not there to play champagne football. He's not there to even stay to win games. He wants 1 point. Just give me the magic numbers, whatever the number is. He's going to figure out a way to just get those 18 points.
And I think his next 2 games are Arsenal and Liverpool. So he's got a Merseyside derby. If he can get a pick at one point of those 2, the mood will start to change, right? And then they've got, you know, a relegation contenders Leeds. They've got Villa. They've got Nottingham. They've got Brentford. They've, you know, there's winnable
games.
There's
a good run of games they could get some points.
It's not terrible. Sure. It's not terrible. They actually, after the Brentford, it gets a bit rough. It's Chelsea, Tottenham, United. So that's not great either. But you know, they end with, you know, Fulham, Crystal Palace, Newcastle. Like there's games.
They get confidence to play enough defensive football to earn points, but make it difficult.
Let's be honest. But Frank wasn't a defensive genius. Let's just get that straight.
No, not at all.
Frank's not even a good moron.
Coach, so,
honestly,
he's a moron.
Yeah,
I just feel like we're talking about managers like they're magicians. He doesn't have the squad to do what we're talking about. He doesn't have a battling midfield. He doesn't have the things you need to have to even sit back and try to squeeze out those points and live on the edge of conceding goals and trying to nick games. Like,
I don't know.
If they had even got, like, Chris Woods went to Nottingham Forest, a former striker that he's worked with that can score goals in the Premier League, who's ready to move on from Newcastle, goes in Nottingham Forest. Everton probably could have signed him. Like, give him somebody who at least he's worked with before.
He's got Dwight McNeil, who's been majorly underutilized, and he knows how to utilize him. And Dwight McNeil was a standout player in the Premier League for a number of years. So, you know, there's one. You know, Dominic
Yeah,
Calvert-Lewin is
Decore-
back, and he's
Decore in his midfield as well. Who's
Decore,
can play.
mate, Idrissa Gueye,
Oh, they're
Onana is
playing.
actually not a bad player. Like there's a lot of guys that are being mismanaged, and I think that is a big part of this here. I get your point, Paul, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but there's guys who can do it. Neil Maupay was decent at Brighton. You know, that was a decent signing for them. Also, we thought. I think there's an awful lot of personalities that are just. They're not great right now, but remember you've got Connor Cody at centre back, right? The one thing that guy has is a fairly decent mentality, and I think with a good manager, you get players playing with a bit more confidence. I think they can turn this around. I got to be honest, I hope they don't, but
I think it's going to be tight. I think
there's so much negativity right now that all of a sudden Everton fans have nothing good to react to. There's no good news. They're already picketing things. They're going to shoot themselves in the foot. They're going to make it worse for the players on game days. Like it's just something to give nothing to the fan base and to this new manager is just that momentum that's going to push them over the edge. And it's not done in a vacuum. Yeah, they've got a good team. They should be doing more. The teams around them are also pretty decent. Southampton can beat somebody on the day. They got better in the transfer window. Leeds got better in the transfer window. There's no team around the drop other than Everton that didn't get better in some way. And Everton feel like they're conceding it.
On the note that managers aren't magicians, I agree with that to some extent, but I do think we can look at Aston Villa as a very good example of what a manager can do to change what seems like a sort of squad that doesn't really have the energy or the means to improve, to immediately improve them. And I think that he will do that to probably enough players to be in the conversation. I'm not saying they 100% get up, but they're going to be right on that cusp like they were last season. I think there's other teams that will potentially drop below them, even though they've done some things in the transfer window, because I think Dyche has not magic, but enough to get them playing defensively to maintain some semblance of staying in the top flight. But it'll be really, really hard.
That is the joy of these conversations. Time will tell, as the saying goes.
I didn't say anything dumb, so.
It is and speaking of time, that is our
time. That's it, folks. Nice little.
Can we just wrap up and just have a small talk about the fun story in football that is Will Still? Have we touched on Will Still right now?
No idea who Will Still is. So no.
You do. You'll have seen him. So Will Still is that 30-year-old manager in Ligue 1 who's currently looking after Stade de Reims, and they have gone unbeaten since he took over. And they're all blowing up. This is his first actual coaching, and Reims are being fined 22,000 euros a game because he doesn't have the official coaching thing qualifications that he needs.
I've not heard
and it's fantastic.
It's amazing.
Mate, you go and have a look. He's won 6 and he's drawn 6, and his last one was a late equalizer against PSG. He is doing sensational.
Magic manager.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. He was a video analyst and all that. And
Bully will be looking at him. Trust me, Bully's already got his eye on him.
I was about to say,
Will's throwing the money at him right now.
Bowley's probably drawing up a fake UEFA qualification. He's got a graphic designer on it.
He fits the profile of young and unproven, correct?
Absolutely, he does.
100 million spread out over 20 years. Right now, let's go. Let's do it.
Let's go. You got it.
Beautiful.
You got it.
Love it.
Nice. All right. Well, Paul, do you want to sign us off there, fella?
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the North End Premier League channel. Please like and subscribe. We like it when you like and subscribe. We like it when you tell your friends about us. We like it when you comment on us. We like it when you join us. Come on down, everybody. But subscribe. That's
support the channel. Smash that like button. Subscribe.
Do it, or we'll hurt people.
And Eric, great to see you.
And Eric,
It's been a pleasure.
Great debut. We're looking forward to having him come back for sure. It's fantastic.
We'll be talking.
Game week starts Friday, boys and girls. Enjoy yourselves.
Watch out. Chelsea's on the rise. Chelsea's on the rise.
This is the North End. This is the North End.